Hi there, welcome to the CTE Learning Series. This series was created to jumpstart your 2021 professional development with new CTE Learning Series that we have here at ACTE. Beginning in mid-January, we hope that you will join us as we showcase some of the best professionals and as they share learning opportunities for CTE personnel. Each webinar that we'll hold over the next couple weeks is 30 minutes long and free, and will feature experts sharing information on topics which are noted on our website. If you plan on joining us, we ask that you go ahead and register for those Zoom links, and then you can also both personally grow and then discover ways that you can learn even more about these important approaches to your high-quality CTE instructions. Just as a reminder, over the next 6 weeks or so, we'll be holding this weekly event at noon on either Wednesday or Thursday. And again, that website, I'll post it in the chat today, and we'll also make sure that you have access to it. But for today, we just want to go ahead and welcome Dr. Richard Jones, who's the Senior Consultant at Successful Practices Network. And he has varied and extensive educational experience and understands the importance of education in a changing world. He has worked with educators in all 50 states, developing the commitment to school change and skills necessary to better prepare students for the future. Dick has served in several leadership capacities for 2 decades in the New York State Education Department, and also worked in the private sector developing technology applications for schools. So we're going to go ahead and welcome Dr. Richard Jones today as he shares a little bit more about his expertise, especially pertaining to CTE Learn. Dr. Richard Jones, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Delighted to be here with you this morning and afternoon and share with you a little bit of the exciting work that we're doing here in New York. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Using as an example the CTE Learn course that we've developed for creating a safe CTE learning environment, a very important area in all aspects of our instruction. We've been working the last year or so in New York talking about how we might enhance some of our professional learning activities, helping our CTE teachers. And that became obviously important in 2020 as we shut down schools in most of our communities. One of the things that we discovered in doing this is to look at a different type of platform. We're doing short information series here, but really reflecting some of the things that we decided to do through CTE Learn, sponsored by ACTE. It really was a convergence of several things going on in New York State. This first course that we put together was directed at administrators, and this came out of conversations among our State Administrator Association, talking about a professional development need among a lot of their new and prospective members. We're seeing a turnover in a lot of administrative positions within the state, seeing a number of new young administrators come into those positions that may have administrative experience, but not CTE experience, and not understanding all the complexities of what they're dealing with in supervising those CTE programs. In those conversations, we talked about how we might bring together the expertise of other educators across the state and provide that in a personalized vehicle of professional learning. At the same time, ACTE was developing the CTE learning platform. That was an ideal time for us to recognize that's a way for us to provide this professional learning on a personalized, ongoing, accessible area for a lot of these prospective new administrators. So that's what we've undertaken over the last 6 to 8 months here in New York. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about the first course that we've put online on safety. First, I want to talk a little bit about the overall project we're doing, and I think some of the elements that make the professional learning activities within CTE Learn so powerful and effective. Let me share my screen and bring some slides up. Here's my email address. If any of you have some further questions, happy to talk with you about the project and what we're doing in New York, not only about this course, but others as well. So you've got my email address. You can follow up to ask me any information about what we're doing. This has been an exciting adventure for us in looking at a different model of CTE Learn courses and courses for professional development. Let me get to the beginning of my slides rather than the end of my slides. Let me tell you a little bit about first of the mentoring that we decided to do in New York to support these administrators, where the courses are part of that. As I indicated, the audience we were targeting were new administrators. One of the things that we did was to think about the competencies that were required uniquely to be a CTE administrator. Created a competency matrix for that of identifying a number of key areas, then began to link some of the existing professional development resources we had to that matrix, and then to lay out a plan what were new topics that we needed to develop in order to serve that particular population. And as part of this, having the private community for these experienced mentors and new administrators collaborating together within the forum, the career lounge of CTE Learn. This is just a glimpse of the competency matrix that we put together that identified 9 different key competency areas for a CTE administrator. Some of these are pretty common to all school leaders in what they do within their role as an administrator, but some of these are uniquely required of CTE. The advocacy role, the whole safety consideration that we're talking about today, and the external involvement of the community and advisory committees are a complex expectation that many administrators haven't had experience with. So that competency model becomes the framework for all of the professional learning that we have available and what we're working on. We put all of these courses in the competency matrix under our state portal for CTE Learn. And this was a great opportunity as a partnership between ACTE and the state associations, that we could have a state portal that would brand our state associations and would make available all the rich resources that have been developed nationally, along with the individual ones that we're doing within New York State. Just a comment about the work in progress. We have 3 of the courses that we've added to CTE Learn that we've completed, but we've got about 14 courses in development that are in various stages of writing. We've gone to experienced CTE professionals to do the authoring on these courses, and then going through a very rigorous editing process to fit these within the model of the CTE Learn course format. So this is just a beginning process that we're excited about continuing and expanding the capacity of our professional development resource. So the 3 courses that you see at the top of this list are the 3 that are currently available within CTE Learn and available nationally. One of the decisions that we made early on as we began to tackle some of these topics that administrators needed was that we wanted to make sure we had courses that were available to all education professionals and not make them so New York centric. So we asked our writers as they began to tackle the courses not to put specific New York language in them, but to make them generic. So we've not only made these available to our New York people through the portal, but these are available as credit courses for everyone across the country. We also divided our work into 2 areas. As we made these courses generic for all CTE administrators, we did have some topics we needed to tackle for our New York educators that were unique to our New York procedures. And those we've put into some lessons, and we're starting to make some of those available as well. So that was the unique aspect of CTE Learn. We could have lessons and courses that we could share with everybody, and those that we could share specifically to our New York audience. The way that you access the lessons and where you would find this lesson we're talking about today on safety is going into the credit courses. And these are the structured 4-hour in length courses, clock hours, for students or for administrators to experience as part of their professional learning. There's a robust category for CTE teachers, also for online teachers and career staff, career services staff. The leadership staff and school leaders, which might be administrators or other school leaders, has dozens of courses around a variety of topics. And a lot of this comes from the work of the ACT's partner in this effort, Max Knowledge. But there weren't any specific courses in here dedicated toward CTE leaders. And that's what we've done with the courses that we've added. So there's a new category in the leadership staff that you'll look for in going into CTE Learn. And then as you open up that leadership staff category, you will find essentials for CTE administrators. So the course we're talking about today and the other courses we are developing will be available in that portion of the website. So the first one listed and the first one we're talking about today is creating a safe CTE learning environment. Before I get into the course, I want to talk a little bit about some of the organization and elements within the CTE Learn courses, because I think that's important to understand how a unique learning experience these are. The courses obviously have descriptions and objectives, and for all the courses, even before you subscribe, you can shop through to see what those courses consist of with very clear descriptions and objectives and outcomes. All of the courses are organized around 4 modules, and that kind of aligns with the 4 hours of experience to kind of work through each of those modules. And then within each module, there's a number of subtopics, usually 4 to 6, that break the content down into smaller areas, smaller chunks, really consistent with a lot of the elements of micro learning and making this not like a college course with extensive amount of content to read, but what's the essence of the key information that you need for that particular concept. And then there's a final quiz in order to have a mechanism for showing that individuals have completed this to earn the credential for completing the course that you might use for clock hours and continuing education requirement, or that you might bundle into college credit. There is a final quiz to demonstrate the knowledge that you've learned through that course. One of the areas that I came to understand in working with this that made this model unique and much more engaging to the participants is there was a real effort to keep the content short. I teach graduate courses part-time, and there's some expectations for extensive reading, and you may be familiar with some of that. But in these courses, the content is kept short, short passages of text, also audio passages to listen to in place of reading, and short video clips, 2 or 3 minutes in length, no watching long webinars or long presentations. So trying to pull out just that essence of information and short content that you need to grasp that particular idea. There are quizzes along, so after each module and at the end that I mentioned, to reinforce the knowledge as you move through to make sure that you do understand the key elements in that content. The piece that's particularly unique is to have some learning items, things that pop up through the sequence of that course that cause the reader or viewer or participant to stop and pause and to think about what that content consists of. Learning comes from reflection. It doesn't come from just listening to a webinar or reading a passage, but when you as the student think about and reflect on what you've learned and how you might apply that, that becomes some learning that's going to stick and you're going to retain that. And even in instruction that's not instructor-led, we've incorporated some elements that make this very powerful. One is asking some reflective questions, and a couple different ways that you answer that. You might answer that with a text box in the course, or more likely you'll go to the career lounge where you have an opportunity to answer that reflective question and share those with other individuals across the country that have taken that course and shared their particular responses to that reflective question. Another is the knowledge bite, which becomes a related piece of information, still under the topic, but something that the reader might not think about. And it poses a question and then a pop-up piece of information. And those are much more engaging and reflective as an interruption in the flow of the content. I'm going to show you an example of that. And the other is a thinking break, which is a powerful way to modify what we typically think of as questions and answers. As educators, we're so conditioned to ask a question, what's the right answer in multiple choice, and what are the three distractors, and make sure they don't parallel the correct answer. But a thinking break is a modification on that where you can have some more interaction and feedback with the student. And then finally, an action item where it might ask you to reflect upon how you're going to use that information right now. And it might be entering that information in a text box and you print it out and save that to say, these are some things I'm going to do after reading that particular information. So those become ways to stimulate more learning through these online courses. Here's an example of the knowledge bite that comes out of the safety course. So as you're reading along in the content, it comes to a point where a box pops up and says, are teens injured more often than other adult workers? So you try to phrase a question that there isn't a specific answer to, does relate to the topic. So you click on it and it flips over and shows the answer that describes some research that teens absolutely experience more accidents and are injured more often comparatively than adults. So some related information, kind of an interesting fact, and a different way of providing some content rather than the sterile embedded within long content. And so each subtopic through the course has these knowledge bites to cause some reflection and change the flow of content in the lesson. Here's the other one I mentioned, the thinking break. So this one poses a question like a typical quiz might. When inspecting a CTE facility for safe and efficient operational procedures and design, the administrator supervisor should focus their attention on blank. Which one of these three answers would you choose? So you read the three answers, you kind of pick one you think is best. I'll click on each individual workstation and it says, well, that's not the best choice. So all of the answers here have been selected that could be answers that are partially right and not complete distractors. You get the feedback of not the best choice. You can go back and then click a different one. That one we got is the best choice. So there's some engagement and interaction here that you're getting some feedback, causing some reflection, a learning item that's a part of the curriculum. So those are some elements I wanted to just give you a feel about that makes the learning courses, CTE learning courses, much different than some of the other online learning that you might experience. Well, let's get to the new course that we've created, Creating a Safe CTE Learning Environment. As I indicated, we've really geared this for administrators, thinking about that new administrator who may have been a principal in schools, but now all of a sudden is in a school facility and they walk into an automotive shop or a cosmetology lab or an agricultural lab and say, whoa, what's going on here? Is this a safe learning environment for my students? And there's a lot to learn. So while anybody, CTE teacher may also find this course useful in getting some reminders about what some of those key elements are in operating a safe environment. In any course, you want to chunk together the content. What are the key elements we want to put within this short 4-hour experience? And what we decided was to focus on developing a safety plan, general safety procedures that apply to most CTE programs, facility operation and maintenance, and then finally emergency procedures and action. So those are the 4 modules that exist within this. As I mentioned earlier, we have experienced educators that served as the authors of these particular lessons. Steve Perry, a longtime CTE administrator from New York City, John Bowen High School, which has the largest agriculture program in the state in New York, was the author on this. And Steve had some great experience to draw from in developing this, along with pulling a lot of rich resources. Let me talk a little bit about each one of the modules and some of the things that we've included within that particular course. The first module on developing a safety plan reminds you that it's really essential that as a school, you have a set of written procedures and expectations regarding safety. In creating that written document, what you're really after is creating a culture of safety. It's important to have some rules and procedure that you want to follow, but that plan also goes into the areas of training and expectation for students so that you help to build this culture over time. We've included some references to some other school safety plans that you might consider, and encourage you to really engage as many different people as important in developing that safety plan. It's not important just to have it, but the fact that you develop it. Actively involving employers, also involving other safety specialists within your community could be helpful in developing that plan. And also recognizing that you need to take time to get new people involved. As you bring new teachers in, are they familiar with the plan? I remember an administrator that made a comment to me a long time ago that talked about improvement plans and said every 3 or 4 years, he likes to have an issue, almost orchestrating an issue that we need to go back and redo that plan because it gets the new people involved, new students, new parents involved in the importance of that plan, not the fact that it sat on a shelf somewhere. So the first module is all about that notion of building a safety plan. The next one is on general safety practices. And this gets into some of the things that are common in any type of CTE environments where students are doing live work. And that can vary from program to program, whether you're working with chemicals, heavy equipment, or even animals in an agriculture program. Talks about personal protective equipment and those that are particularly required across programs for eye protection and in some cases, face masks. Those are the kinds of things thinking about an administrator walking into a classroom should expect to see those on a consistent basis. Are those personal protective equipment pieces that are universally required in programs? Every CTE program is going to have some of the unique safety requirements for their program, but there are some that should be expected across the board. The next module is on facility operation and maintenance. And this gets into maintaining safe equipment within an environment. We work with very sophisticated equipment in CTE programs. That needs to make sure that those devices are up to date and following current safety requirements, that safety guards and protections that are built in are maintained and operational. Those fall to the responsibilities of the teacher to stay current and operate with those. And sometimes those are tough choices to say, we want to keep that piece of equipment here, but yeah, that guard fell off and let's continue to work with it. Safety's got to be that priority consideration and making sure you have that understanding between instructors and administrators as to what is proper operation and maintenance. This also gets into housekeeping in maintaining a neat and safe environment. Sometimes it's not so much the devices, but maintaining a good cleanliness in a CTE environment. And so some of the content here talks about some of that, talks about individuals having routine procedures for cleanup and maintenance to try and reduce those opportunities for hazards. Having some routine safety checks that must be adhered to when starting up a class, ending a class, and following those procedures consistently. All of that is part of maintaining operation and maintenance. And the fourth module gets into emergency procedures and actions. Accidents do happen, and some of them cannot be completely prevented. So there needs to be some clear procedures as to what's expected when an accident happens. Who needs to be notified? What is the appropriate chain of command? And that there's appropriate documentation. You never know when one of those events is going to come back and be a legal liability against the school. And it's important for teachers to understand those procedures, have those well established within your school community and the hierarchy of administration as to how you handle record keeping and or unfortunately treatment in some cases where you have some of those accidents. So that's all part of that safety culture and following those correct procedures. We've really placed an emphasis on safety in schools from many different perspectives, particularly as we talk about active shooter drills and some of the issues that we've had to deal with as state organizations. But we need to think about in CTE programs how we're maintaining that safe environment. That's our first responsibility as educators, is to provide that kind of environment for students. This is the kind of thing that can be approached from an administrative perspective of everyone understanding the same set of expectations. It goes back to the safety plan that we talked about. And the elements within this course are really to help administrators understand, as well as CTE teachers understand, the expectations around providing that safe environment. So even if you've been teaching for a long time, it would be a useful reminder to go back through and take a course like this to review the content and say, yes, I've been following some of those procedures, but maybe here's a couple of reminders that I need to do to continue to provide a safe environment within the school in the program that I'm working with. So that gives you a quick overview of, I wanted to make sure you understood the dynamics of what the CTE courses look like and how they help to stimulate learning in this short, personalized online learning environment. And the CTE learning environment safety is one of the first that we've tackled. I'm looking forward to sharing in subsequent webinars the things that we've accomplished in some of our other courses, and hope that you'll take advantage of those looking online to explore CTE Learn.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Laura,
Jones, for that great presentation.
I don't know if we've got any questions to answer. Happy to do that.
Doesn't look like there's any questions, but praise for your presentation. So thank you, Dr. Jones, for coming in today and being the special guest speaker. And for those who are interested, we have another webinar next week on Thursday, and we hope that you will join. So thank you so much for joining, and we will see you soon.